No one ever gets married thinking they'll one day be standing in the shadows of suspicion, questioning everything they once believed. I wasn't the jealous type. At least, that's what I used to believe. Until her eyes stopped meeting mine. My wife, Claire, and I had been together for 8 years, married for 5. We weren't perfect, but I thought we had something real. We laughed together. We built a home. We talked about kids. And up until about 6 months ago, I could have sworn she looked at me like I was her whole world. But slowly, things changed. It started small, little things. She used to call me every day after work, just to say she was heading home. Those calls became texts, then nothing. Some days, she'd walk in the door later than usual, brushing it off with a vague, "Work was crazy." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. I still do, in a strange way. One night, I made her favorite, grilled salmon with rosemary butter. She came home 3 hours late, didn't even touch the plate, said she was too tired, but she smelled like perfume, not hers. That night, I lay beside her in bed, staring at the ceiling while she fell asleep within minutes. I remember listening to the sound of her breath, steady, unbothered. And I wondered how many lies could hide behind a single exhale. I told myself I was overreacting, that stress makes people act different, that maybe she's just distracted, that she still loved me. But doubt has a way of dripping in, quietly, persistently, like water from a leaking faucet in the middle of the night. You try to ignore it. You convince yourself it's nothing, but it keeps dripping, until one day you can't unhear it. The tipping point came one Saturday. She said she had a conference to attend across town, something to do with client networking. I offered to drive her. She refused. "I don't want you wasting your day," she said, tying her hair in that perfect low bun she only did for events that actually mattered. I smiled, nodded, but something tightened in my chest. I watched her from the window as she pulled out of the driveway. Her car turned left instead of right. That wasn't the direction to the convention center. I wanted to call her. I wanted to ask where she was really going, but I didn't. Instead, I spent the day cleaning the house, not because it needed it, but because I needed distraction. I wiped the windows, vacuumed under the couch, rearranged bookshelves, but nothing could dust away that feeling in my gut. She came home past midnight. I was still awake, sitting in the dark like some cliché heartbroken husband in a movie. She looked surprised to see me. "Didn't think you'd still be up," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "I wanted to hear about the conference." She hesitated. "It was fine, long. I'm exhausted." She kissed my cheek and walked past me to the bedroom. I didn't follow her. I couldn't. Something in me cracked that night. A small fracture. The kind you don't even notice at first, but fractures grow. The next morning, while she was showering, I walked past her purse. I never looked through her things before, not once in 8 years. But that morning, my hands moved on their own. Inside, nestled between her wallet and a tube of lipstick I'd never seen before, was a card, a plastic hotel keycard, no logo, just one of those generic white ones. My heart pounded. I felt like I was holding something radioactive. I slipped it back exactly where I found it. She never knew. And when she came out of the shower, wrapped in her robe, smiling like nothing had changed, I smiled back, said nothing, because now I had questions, real questions, and I needed answers. I didn't confront her, not because I was afraid of the truth, but because I wasn't ready to hear her lie to my face. There's something almost sacred about denial. It gives you time to prepare, to brace for impact. I wasn't ready to watch the woman I loved become a stranger with just a few careless words. So, I waited, and I watched. That week, I paid more attention to her tone, her schedule, her phone. She used to leave it around the house, plugged in on the kitchen counter, or thrown carelessly on the bed. Now it was always with her, like a second skin. She even started turning it face down, screen hidden, notifications silenced. And when I asked if everything was okay between us, she smiled like I was a child, asking if monsters were real. "You're overthinking again," she whispered, resting, her hand on my chest. "Everything's fine. I love you." I didn't say anything, just nodded. I think she mistook my silence for acceptance. The truth is, I was grieving. Not for what we had lost, but for the man I used to be, the one who trusted, the one who never questioned, the one who looked at her like she was the center of his universe. That version of me died the moment I held that keycard. A few days later, she told me she had another conference, different hotel, same story. This time I didn't offer to drive her. I didn't ask questions. I just smiled and said, "Have fun." She looked relieved. That told me everything I needed to know. When she left, I waited 30 minutes, just long enough for her to feel safe. Then I followed. I didn't trail her directly. I'm not a spy. But I knew her favorite spots, and I had a hunch. She wasn't at the conference center. She wasn't even near it. Her car was parked outside a boutique, hotel on the other side of town. Not a chain, not something corporate, just a quiet, upscale place where nobody would ask questions. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, watching, thinking. The sun began to set, and for the first time in years, I felt cold. Not from the air, but from everything unraveling inside me. I remember gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My jaw locked so tightly I thought I might chip a tooth. She lied to me, over and over. And when I asked her what was wrong, she told me I was overreacting. That night, when she came home, I was already in bed, pretending to sleep. She slipped beside me, whispered something soft. Her hand reached for mine, but I kept it under the pillow. She sighed. She thought it was over. The next morning, I made us coffee like I always did. Acted like nothing had changed. I told her I'd be working late all week. "Business meetings," I said. She barely reacted. I think, in some twisted way, she was relieved again. And that's when I knew. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't confused. She was comfortable. Because she thought she'd gotten away with it, but I was done being passive. Over the next few days, I started preparing. Quietly, methodically. Not out of spite, but out of dignity. I copied her phone data to an old tablet she'd forgotten about. I had the hotel keycard matched to a room number by a friend who worked in hotel management. I found out who booked it. It wasn't Claire. It was a man named Jason, married, 2 kids. They worked together. I didn't explode. I didn't yell. I didn't confront her with shaking hands and teary eyes. I just took notes. Every detail, every date, every receipt. And then one evening, as we were sitting on the couch watching some show she clearly wasn't paying attention to, I asked her again, "Are you happy?" She looked startled. "What do you mean?" "Just wondering," I said, "if this is still what you want." She paused. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" I met her eyes. For the first time in weeks, I really looked at her. Not the woman I loved, but the woman she had become. "I just feel like we've drifted," I said carefully. "Maybe we need to be honest with each other." Her lips twitched. That forced smile again. "You're overthinking," she repeated. "You always do this." I nodded, sipped my coffee. "Yeah, maybe I do." She got up and went to bed early, and I sat there in the dim living room, staring at the empty space she left behind. But this time, I wasn't broken. This time, I was planning. I used to think staying quiet meant weakness. That silence made you small. But over the years, I've learned silence can be power, if you know how to use it. Claire kept doing what she always did. The late nights, The urgent meetings, the empty reassurances with her eyes focused somewhere else. At times, I caught myself wondering if she even cared I might suspect. Maybe she thought I was too soft to ever call her out. Maybe she thought I needed her too much to walk away. Maybe she thought I couldn't live without her. She didn't know I had already started learning how to. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into work. Stayed later at the office, traveled more, took calls in different time zones just to avoid coming home early. But it wasn't to escape her. It was to rebuild something in me that she had slowly torn apart. I started talking again to friends I had drifted from. I reconnected with my brother. He had always been skeptical of Claire, but never said it out loud. Maybe he didn't have to. Maybe I just didn't want to listen back then. One night, over drinks, he looked at me and said, "You seem clearer, like someone took the weight off your back." I smiled. Someone did. I just haven't told her yet. That week, I changed all the passwords to our shared accounts, moved half my savings into a private account, transferred ownership of the house title temporarily to my name, just in case. I wasn't being vindictive. I was protecting myself from the woman who once promised never to hurt me. Still, I hadn't confronted her. And maybe that's what made it worse for her, because she began to notice the difference. I wasn't cold, but I wasn't warm. I wasn't angry, but I wasn't affectionate. I stopped asking where she was. I stopped waiting up. I stopped caring about her stories that didn't line up. And that terrified her more than any accusation could have. She started watching me closely, asking if everything was okay, leaving little notes in my briefcase like she used to during our first year of marriage. She even tried cooking my favorite meal one night. The same one she ignored. Months ago, it tasted just like I remembered, but I couldn't swallow it. "Everything all right?" she asked with a hopeful smile. I nodded, wiped my mouth, and quietly said, "This tastes like a memory." She blinked, caught off guard by the comment. I could tell she didn't know how to respond. That was the moment I saw it. A crack in her armor, not guilt, fear. She was starting to realize that I knew, that I wasn't the fool she thought I was, that I was simply waiting. And that's when she changed tactics. She became overly affectionate, unusually present. She'd text me during work, hours just to say she missed me, call me randomly, ask about my day, tell me she was thinking about us. She even brought up the idea of taking a vacation together. A clean slate, she said. A reset. Just the two of us. Part of me wanted to say yes, to believe her, to run away from the pain and pretend none of it ever happened. But that part of me had grown quiet. The man she used to manipulate no longer lived here. I remember one evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun set, something we used to do when life felt simple, she reached over and placed her hand gently on mine. "I know I've been distant," she began, "and I know you feel it, but I've just been under pressure. Work, life. It's all been too much sometimes." I turned to her. "And Jason?" Her face froze. Her fingers stiffened against my hand. A split second of panic flared in her eyes before she caught herself. "Who?" she asked too quickly. I gave her a soft, tired smile. "It's okay," I said. "I'm not accusing you." She looked confused, maybe even a little hopeful. "Then why bring it up?" "Because I need you to know that I know. Not for a fight, not for revenge, just for the truth." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I could see her mind racing, trying to calculate how much I'd uncovered, what angle to take. Denial? Tears? Anger? But I stood up before she could speak. "It's getting cold," I said quietly, walking back into the house. That night, she didn't follow me to bed. The silence between us became heavier after that evening on the porch. Not cold, just dense. Like walking through a fog you can't quite see through, but you feel it on your skin. Every word was measured. every glance calculated. We were two actors reading from different scripts, standing on the same stage. She didn't bring up Jason again. Neither did I. But the shift had already happened. I stopped sleeping beside her, told her I was having trouble with my back and needed to use the guest room for a while. She didn't protest, just nodded. Too quickly. That was confirmation in itself. She started texting more, hiding her phone less, as if she thought overcorrecting would make up for everything. I watched her try to play the role of loving wife again, like it was a costume she'd forgotten how to wear. But I saw the panic in her eyes every time she thought I might say something. Every time she walked into a room and found me on the phone or working late, or simply not reacting the way I used to. I was no longer giving her a version of me she could predict, and that unsettled her. I kept gathering the pieces, quietly. Emails, call logs, calendar entries she thought were deleted. I didn't need everything. Just enough. One evening, I invited an old friend over for dinner, Rachel. She and I had dated long before Claire ever entered the picture, but we'd stayed friends, distant, respectful. Nothing inappropriate, just warm familiarity. Claire didn't like it. She tried to hide it, but I saw the flicker in her eyes when Rachel walked in and gave me a hug. I saw the tight smile when Rachel complimented the decor, then added, "Wow, you've kept things so neat, just like the old days." Claire didn't say much during dinner, just smiled politely, barely touched her food. When Rachel left, Claire asked, "Since when do you talk to her again?" I shrugged. "She reached out a few weeks ago. Just wanted to catch up. That's okay, right?" She opened her mouth, hesitated, then said, "Sure, of course. I just didn't realize she was back in your life." Her voice trembled slightly. That's when I knew. She wasn't worried I'd cheat. She was terrified I'd leave. The irony, right? The woman who had spent months building a secret life behind my back was now panicking over a dinner guest, and I hadn't even raised my voice once. That weekend, I made a reservation, not at a hotel, at a quiet restaurant. That weekend, I made a reservation. Not at a hotel, at a quiet restaurant, the kind of place where the lighting is soft, the tables are spaced far apart, and conversations stay private. We hadn't been there since our 3rd anniversary. I chose it for a reason. When I told Claire I wanted to take her out for dinner, her eyes lit up with something I hadn't seen in a while. Hope. She smiled too quickly, as if waiting for this moment, for some kind of reset button. "Really?" she asked. "Just us?" I nodded. Just us. She spent almost 2 hours getting ready that evening. I watched her from the hallway as she stood in front of the mirror, touching up her lipstick. The same shade she wore the night. I proposed. I remember because it left a faint smudge on my shirt, and I never washed it out. When we got to the restaurant, she looked radiant, calm, almost confident, as if she thought I had finally come around, that the version of me she used to control was back. She didn't know I brought an envelope with me. We ordered wine. She talked about wanting to take time off work soon, maybe even a short vacation. Somewhere quiet, she said. Somewhere with no phones. I let her talk. When the appetizers came, I reached into my coat pocket and slid the envelope across the table. She blinked. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside were 3 things. A printed copy of the hotel reservation, under Jason's name. A photo of her car in the hotel parking lot. A screen capture of a message she sent him. "I miss your hands. Tonight can't come soon enough." Her hands trembled as she held the paper. Her eyes darted from the table to my face and back again. She didn't speak, not at first. Then, softly, "You went through my things?" I nodded slowly. "No, I went through your lies." She stared at me, lips parted, as if searching for a script. But there was none, not for this scene. "I was going to tell you," she said, her voice cracking. "When?" I asked. "After another night at the conference." After another. Breakfast across from me, pretending everything's fine. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't feel sorry. I didn't feel cruel either. I felt clarity. "You think I don't love you anymore," she whispered. "I think you stopped loving me long before I ever questioned it." Her mascara started to run. People glanced from nearby tables, but I didn't care. She was breaking, not because I yelled, not because I blamed her, but because I stayed calm. That's the thing with people who manipulate. They expect chaos when exposed, not silence. And my silence was louder than any accusation she'd rehearsed, a defense for. She reached for my hand, but I didn't move. "I don't want to lose you," she said. I looked at her hand resting on the table, nails painted perfectly, still shaking. And for a moment, I remembered the girl I fell in love with, the one who used to make me laugh when the world felt too heavy. But that girl was gone. "You already did," I said quietly. We sat there for a long time after that. She cried. I didn't. She asked if we could fix it. I didn't answer. I paid the bill and walked her to the car. In the driveway, she turned to me. "Are you going to leave?" "I haven't decided," I replied, unlocking the door. That was the truth. I hadn't. Not because I didn't have the strength, but because part of me still wondered if there was anything left to save. That night, I slept in the guest room. Again, I didn't lock the door, but she didn't come in. She knew the distance between us wasn't just physical anymore. It was something colder, something final. The days that followed were quiet, too quiet. Claire tried to keep things normal. She cooked breakfast. She texted me sweet nothings. She even started wearing the perfume she knew I liked, the one she stopped using months ago. But none of it reached me, because the moment I handed her that envelope, something between us shattered. Not like glass, loud and dramatic, more like ice, slow, silent, unforgiving. I didn't bring it up again. I didn't need to. She walked on eggshells, waiting for the fallout. But I made no move, and that terrified her more than yelling ever could. Then came our anniversary, 5 years. She asked if I still wanted to go to the dinner reservation she had made weeks earlier. I said yes. She looked surprised, but relieved. She got dressed up, beautiful, graceful, nervous. I could feel her watching me as we drove, stealing glances, trying to read my silence. The restaurant was the same one we went to on our honeymoon. Sentimental choice. Clever even. But I hadn't come for memories. We were seated at a quiet corner table. She tried to fill the silence with small talk, asked about my work, my family, even mentioned adopting a dog someday. I listened. I smiled when appropriate. Then I reached into my coat pocket. This time, no envelope, just a folded piece of paper. She looked at it, hesitant. "What's this?" I handed it to her, slowly. "It's from Jason's wife." Her hands froze before touching it. I watched her swallow, then unfold the page with shaking fingers. It wasn't just any letter. It was a printout of an email. From Jason's wife to me. She'd discovered everything. The hotel visits, the texts, the late nights. But unlike Claire, Jason had been careless. He used their shared credit card for one of the rooms. His wife reached out to me after finding my number in his call history. We talked, compared timelines, compared truths, and in that moment, 2 strangers became allies. Claire's lips trembled as she read the words. "I'm sorry this happened to both of us. If you're planning to confront them, I'd like to be there too." Claire looked up at me with glassy eyes. "You told her?" "I didn't have to," I said. She figured it out, just like I did. Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't just tears of guilt. They were tears of exposure, because for the first time, it wasn't just about me and her anymore. It was public. There were other eyes now, other hearts broken, other witnesses. "I can fix this," she whispered, voice cracking. "We can still fix this." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who had lied to my face, night after night, who made me question my own sanity, who told me I was overreacting. I don't think you even know what this is anymore, I said quietly. She reached for my hand across the table, but I gently pulled it back. I made a reservation, I said. She blinked. For what? For tomorrow morning. A storage unit. I moved most of my things there last week. Her mouth fell open. I've also spoken to a lawyer, I added softly. Nothing finalized, just preparing, like you prepared. Your alibis. Claire was silent. I'm not here to punish you, I continued. I just want you to understand something. She nodded slowly, barely able to keep eye contact. When you looked me in the eye and told me I was imagining things, when you made me feel like the fool, that's what broke us. Not Jason, not the affair, but the way you let me drown in doubt while you stood on the shore, pretending to save me. She covered her mouth with her hand as her shoulders began to shake. I didn't want to lose you, she whispered. But you did, I replied, the moment you stopped choosing me. We left the restaurant in silence. She cried quietly on the way home. I didn't say another word. That night, I didn't. Sleep in the guest room. I booked a hotel of my own, and for the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. The hotel room was small, clean, quiet, just a queen-sized bed, a desk, and a view of the city that didn't really matter. But I remember sitting by the window that night, watching the glow of traffic far below, and realizing something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I thought I would be. I thought that after the confrontation, after the heartbreak, and the final reveal, I'd feel this righteous fury inside me. But all I felt was stillness. Like something inside had settled. Like the storm had passed. The next morning, I didn't. A rush back. I took my time. Had breakfast alone. Walked around a park we used to visit. The trees had started to turn golden. People walked their dogs. Laughed with their kids. Life moved on. And I realized I could too. When I got home, Claire was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red, her hair a mess. She looked like she hadn't slept. I didn't sit down. She stood, unsure. Can we talk? I nodded, but I stayed by the doorway. I know I hurt you, she said softly. And I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know it wasn't just about Jason. It was about me, about how lost I was. Her voice cracked. I kept thinking you'd get tired of me, that you'd stop choosing me. And before I knew it, I stopped choosing you first. I let her speak. I owed her that much. I thought the affair would fill something. I thought it would remind me I was still wanted. But it didn't. It just made me feel emptier. She looked at me, pleading. I know I don't deserve your trust. I don't even know if I deserve your kindness. But I need to ask, is there any part of you that still believes in us? I took a long breath. There's a part of me that always will, I said quietly. But that part doesn't get to make decisions anymore. She broke then, right there in the kitchen, sobbing into her hands. I didn't move to comfort her, not because I didn't care, but because that chapter was closed. I spent the next few days finalizing the move. I told her I'd take time before making any decisions about divorce. She asked if we could try counseling. I told her I'd think about it. And I meant that, but not for reconciliation, for closure. Because some endings don't need to be loud. Some endings come with a sigh, not a scream. I moved into a small apartment near work. Nothing fancy, just mine. I started running again, cooking for one, reading books I'd left unfinished for years. I even joined a photography class on weekends, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. One Sunday morning, I found myself at a cafe near the river, camera in hand, sunlight hitting just right. And I realized I was okay. Not perfect, not healed completely, but okay. I wasn't a broken man. I was a man who had been broken and chose to rebuild. And that made all the difference. Claire still sends messages sometimes. Updates, apologies, hopes. I read them. Sometimes I respond. Most times I don't. Because forgiveness is one thing. But returning to who we were, that's something else entirely. I once thought love meant holding on at all costs. That true loyalty meant staying, even when everything inside you begged to leave. But now I know, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for the person you're becoming. So if you're watching this, and you've ever been made to feel like you were overreacting when your heart screamed otherwise, trust yourself. You're not crazy, you're not too much, you're not imagining things, you're just someone who sees the truth a little sooner than they expected. And maybe that's not a curse, it's a gift.